from me, a leader is thinking about that concept of saying, do I provide vision? Now, that doesn't mean I have to provide the corporate vision or give everyone, but am I providing vision for the people I'm working with? Is there a clear outcome? What are we aiming at?
Hello and welcome to the Care to Lead podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Timo Anderson with us as a guest. Timo is a trainer at Zingerman's ZingTrain, the corporate training arm of the iconic Zingerman's food brand in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think I heard somewhere that it's like the coolest place in America to work or something like that. I'm going to talk to him about that. Timo teaches regular workshops with a variety of business professionals, from C-suite executives at large multinational companies to startup founders and everything in between. And this is going to be a conversation that is right up my alley because that's exactly what I do. So this is going to be fun. We're going to talk about some communication and how communication breakdowns can affect your business. Timo, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit more about that coolest place to work, or was it coolest place or coolest business?
It was one of the 50 coolest businesses in Inc. magazine. Bo Burlingham was working on that. And so it's a lovely little article we have. We have the label posted up in our iconic deli located in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, known for its Reuben sandwiches and amongst other things. And it's now grown to a community of 11 businesses that we have in the Ann Arbor area, including some that some people might know of, a mail order business that ships all our food all over the country. So it's been quite a growth, but we were one of the coolest businesses. And then the training arm came about as a way to initially thought about it for doing internal training, but then realized a lot of individuals around the country and businesses wanted to figure out kind of how to help their businesses be what they wanted them to be. And so our job is to share what's made Zingerman successful and get really clear on sharing those and letting businesses adapt and take those materials and information however they'd like to, and building and working with them to create the businesses they want to.
Okay, a really smart business move, obviously. If it's working well for you, it's going to work well for others. What do you think are the main ingredients that have helped them be successful that you were able to take it to the next level?
We have a number of different things that we kind of think of. And this is one of those questions. People always say, what's the secret? Like, what's the one thing? And there isn't. I think there's a patchwork created over 42 years of lots of practice. And I'm sure, Cynthia, you've done this in talking with people around the country. There isn't one trick. There isn't one hack that makes you really good. It's all of the different pieces. And I think part of those pieces are the openness of communication and conversation. Our managing partners, the individuals who own and operate kind of like a board for the Zingerman's community businesses, those are open meetings once a month that any one of our employees get paid to attend. So communicating and hearing and listening what's going on, not only in the bakery or the bake shop that I'm doing something in, but in this event space or in our mail order business or in our coffee company, and knowing all of those pieces and how they interact make all of our staff more aware and more engaged. It's not required, but it's an opportunity, and they're paid to listen and be engaged and be a part of that.
That transparency is great. I mean, it does. Once you know how your role connects to the bigger picture, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah, and it's all in knowing those pieces and then being able to talk. Like, I will be at coffee and share something that's going on at the deli with a customer that I don't work at coffee, but I know, and they're talking about something, say, oh, you could do this. Other people know that. So there's a circulation of information. And I think part of it is we've started to gather a lot of individuals who like to inquire and like to know and want to know more. And so it's not that we say, no, if you don't want to learn, you can't be here. But there's a kind of natural inclusion of individuals who are looking to learn and gather and obtain more information. So that, I think, has been another helpful component amongst many others. Getting very clear on our expectations, I think, is one of the best parts that Maggie Bayless, the founder of ZingTrain, put together. So in communication of what are you expected to do when you walk in the door, at what point? Our training is very clear of what is expected by day 7 and day 30 and day 60 and by day 90, so that it's not just a kind of here's what we're going to do for the first 2 days, but asking throughout your career that your managers, your leaders have clear expectations all the time is a way of communicating back and forth. And if you aren't getting it, we actually give a tool for the staff member to say, I need more information. You as a leader need to tell me what's expectations because you haven't met this. It's on your side of our contract. We have a training compact.
That's awesome. And in your industry, I think as a whole, turnover should be probably fairly high. So I'm guessing that with your training and your cool place to work and all that, your retention rates must be pretty good.
We're doing rather well compared to the average. We're about a fifth of what I understand the national restaurant food service to be. We're at about 1/5 of that annual rate. And so that to me is a really exciting number, right? That we have in a college town, right? We're in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we have colleges, we have students who are coming and going. We have high school students who are involved as well. And to be 1/5 the national rate is really kind of point of pride to say we have this opportunity to say we're doing something that's keeping people connected, keeping people wanting to be here.
Okay, that's awesome. And let's talk about leadership for a little bit. What do you see as the most important role of a leader?
I think for us, again, we've kind of recipe, and I use food-based things all the time because we started as a food business. So we have recipes that are clear in our expectations, right? So for me, a leader is thinking about that concept of saying, do I provide vision? Now, that doesn't mean I have to provide the corporate vision or give everyone, but am I providing vision for the people I'm working with? Is there a clear outcome? What are we aiming at? What are we aiming at? In our mail order business during the holidays, we provide a vision for daily operations to say how many boxes we're putting out. In an 8-hour shift, there's sometimes 8,000 or 9,000 boxes that are going out in our mail order business. And so getting clear, this is what our goal is today because we have lots of orders because we have 3 months that are really heavy. But we think about the leadership and doing that, getting vision, giving great service to staff. It's one of those elements that Paul and Ari, our two founders, did intuitively, but it wasn't something that everyone does without kind of some sort of expectation. So we give what the recipe is for giving great service and say, this is the expectation. We want you to meet it. We want you to manage ethically. And so thinking about all of those ethical decisions and thinking about how we operate, we think about beliefs and how our beliefs are impacting each of us. And so we have a number of elements, and I could go on for the entire conversation on just this one piece, and I won't, but we have a number of these kind of scripted, documented elements that we have as an expectation when you move into a leadership role that you fulfill those expectations, right? And are checked on those every year. So all of our managers, all of our leaders are given that expectation of here's your performance review. It's based on these expectations that we've laid out clearly.
That's cool. When you talk about sharing the vision, it reminded me of a story I heard from, I want to say DSL, the packaging people. The leader of DSL, I guess their people were leaving and there was just packages getting delivered slowly. And he brought the entire company together and he said to them, do you know why we do what we do? You got answers like, well, maybe it's because of our shareholders. It's because you pay our paychecks. And they went through various things. And he said, no. And this was around the holidays. And he said, the reason we do what we do is because we bring Christmas to little children. We are Santa Claus. And when I think just that little click changed the vision for a lot of people. It's no longer just a job I have to do. I'm really connected to, if I don't get this package here, the child in this house might not wake up to something special in the morning. So I think what you're saying is kind of similar to that in sharing the vision with each department and why you're doing what you do.
And I would say we also mission is very similar in our mind for that. And so our mission starts with we share the Zingerman's experience. Right. And so people say, well, what is that? It's I don't know. What is yours, Cynthia? If I were to ask you, what would you want from Zingerman's? Because you're not here in Ann Arbor. So you'd want a great phone call, a great conversation, someone who listened to your questions. But we share that with every single person, including our internal staff. It never says for paying customers in our mission statement. It says we share the Zingerman's experience. It goes on a little bit more and making everyone, as many people as possible, right, with as many people as possible. And so getting really clear, again, communicating from the very beginning. And what I will say is our co-founder is still the CEO. He's the director in operations of some of the businesses. He has an operating hold in each of the businesses, which would be a lot of discussion to try to explain how we operate. But he still does the orientation program for every single staff member. and goes through the mission and tells the story. So from a leadership down, in every single layer, every single employee, we have 750 have gone through an orientation through either he or the other co-founder, Paul Saginaw. And so I think, again, communicating, getting really clear of this is the guts of why we exist, and getting people clear on why we show up is a huge benefit, just like you were talking about in your example.
It's interesting because when you get, I'm guessing you're not, I don't know how many locations you have, if you're just in Ann Arbor, if you have more locations, but I know from a consumer standpoint that once you get used to really good service and really employees that feel like they're delighted to be there. I'll compare it like when I shop at Nordstrom's, and I love going into Nordstrom's. There's someone there to help you all the time. They're happy, they're friendly, it's just an amazing place to walk into. And then if you have to go into another department store, it's like, it's culture shock. It's like, I can't do this. So I'm wondering if your customers who move away find the same thing when they go to another store.
I mean, I think that's part of so we are only in one location. We're only in the Ann Arbor area. It's in our vision, actually, that we will have one location for the entirety up until at least the next vision, which ends in 2032. We have a picture of success, and we have unique businesses located in the Ann Arbor area. Our mail order business was actually created to fulfill that demand. We had individuals who'd graduated from U of M and moved to other parts of the country and said, we need your brownies. We need some brownies. How can we get brownies? And so they're calling the deli saying, how do we get these? And a couple of very intelligent individuals started to say, well, we have brownies, we have boxes, we have labels, and started shipping. And it's turned into a business that's doing over $20 million in sales.
You just convinced me that when I get off this call, I'm going to have to look up how to get some of these brownies.
They are pretty spectacular. We have a variety that are delicious.
So what are the most common misconceptions about the food industry that you'd like to debunk?
I mean, I think in some ways we're an outlier in the food industry because we have chosen to be small by choice. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure many of your people have heard about Small Giants, and there's an organization that does this, but intending to be small by choice and thinking about how we operate to make sure that every single person, we try to have as many people involved and have voices as we can in the organization and have a say. So to say that they don't care, people that can't be trained, I think that one of the biggest ones, my favorite that I talk about when I go out and do trainings with people, is people say, well, millennials, they don't have any service ethic. They don't have these concepts. Like there's these kind of generalized things about some of the generations that have come past X, Y and millennials, whatever you'd like to call kind of the latest groups that don't have a work ethic, they don't have this concept. And I would say, I think in general, and that's seen a lot in the food industry or other kind of areas. And I think it's really interesting because then I asked, well, what expectations were given? What expectations were shared? Because my belief, and the belief that we have in most of our Zingerman's businesses, is that there is if people have clear expectations, they tend to want to meet them. It's when they don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And it doesn't mean micromanagement. When I say this, people say, oh, I need to tell them exactly what they do every 5 minutes. No, that's not what I mean. They need to have a clear idea of what they're doing. They need to know the why of it, but then what their expectations are and how they move forward. And when they have those tools, they get excited about those opportunities and see the path. I think a lot of people in work, whether it be restaurant or other entry-level, mid-level opportunities, say, well, I'm here, I don't know what else to do. And so that's when work starts to suffer. And so for me, that's one of the exciting pieces in our industry, in being in the food business. I think we've had people, I was just at one of our restaurants last night with a couple of clients. And we were talking to servers and I said, okay, how long have you been here? 9 years. How long have you been here? 19 years. Right. And so thinking about what is the draw and connection is they always have new things to do and they're given clear expectations of how to move forward in that. So I think that's one of those pieces.
I really love that. And I want to just kind of add to it for our listeners, because I'm sure that in your culture and the way things are working and having these expectations is a positive thing. Yet when someone else in another industry or another business uses expectations, they can be taken very differently. So, for example, people don't want to work to someone else's expectations. So that same concept for maybe other industries might be commitments. These are the commitments we'd like you to agree to, because then they're honoring something of themselves. Where I think in your industry with this great environment already, this is what's expected. And that's like stepping up to the table, and people are excited to be a part of that. And that's awesome. But I just want to put that little caveat in there for our listeners, where an expectation can sometimes be a negative connotation, where commitment is usually going to not be a negative connotation. What do you think about that?
I guess in my mind, an expectation for us, we'll negotiate if we need to. We use a principle of saying, if this doesn't meet, because we ask both sides, the trainer and the trainee, the leader, the kind of person who's being led, to own up to, does this make sense? Is this meeting the expectations? And take responsibility for the effectiveness of their engagement or training. And so if it doesn't feel right, it'd be you, Cynthia, saying, you know what, Timo, I'm not sure about that. What does that mean? Am I supposed to be doing this or this? And so we ask actually that employees own that side of their compact.
That's exactly the point, that what you're doing is a commitment. It's exactly where that's, I think, where I wanted to clarify, because what you're doing is you're giving both sides, and you say it's a compact, it's a contract between each of them. You're each committing. Where a leader can hear that and without knowing that context and how it's really done, and just go up to somebody and say, here's our expectations of you. And that happens every day. And that just turns people away. They're like, no, I don't want to. And then they'll hear you and they'll go, look, he's really successful using these expectations. But you have to know the whole story. Like, I might call it a commitment, you might call it an expectation, but we're still getting both sides in and letting people speak and letting people say, no, I can't do that. That's not realistic, but here's what I can do. Mm-hmm. And that's very different than just an expectation and blanket statement.
I also think we break down expectations in what we feel has worked. So when we think about it, like your day one, like if I put you in the bakery, Cynthia, your day one expectation is not going to be the same as what you're doing by day 60. And so we break down that into kind of what we believe we found over a lot of time, what is possible. And people are can do more than what we actually expect a majority of the time, a well over majority. But it gives them clear, and it also gives them successes. I think sometimes when we lay out these paths of, you need to know how to do this, you look around and see all these people around you who are amazing at it, and you're not doing very well. And you get overwhelmed and stressed. And you're like, I can't do this. I'm going to leave. And your boss is like, but you've been doing great. You're ahead of the curve. You're doing more than I ever thought possible. We've been putting more on your plate because you're doing so well. And they're like, I can't do anything. So getting really clear on that as well, of what is expected by that certain time, because new staff are overwhelmed. There's a lot of stuff, no matter where they came from and what their experience is. They don't know yours. They don't know the situation of how it works for you. And so bringing them along and giving them a space to say, this is what we'd like you to be able to do here, because we think this is the beneficial tool. Oh yeah, there's cool stuff over there. We'll get to that. But right now we're going to start here, and then we'll do here, and then we'll start to grow you into those other opportunities. And then getting clear what it takes to do that other job over there. Because sometimes that's possible and sometimes it's not.
So that's really interesting. And I think it's a piece that a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations aren't really that great at, is slowing down that orientation and that onboarding to, like, this is what's expected or what you need to commit to by this date. A lot of times, because it's hard to find people, because people are busy, because, we need that body in there, they'll bring somebody in and just start like on the job training as they go. And the person is overwhelmed and it's not conducive to keeping people. And yet it's not intentional. It's just that they're so busy. They just want to hit the ground running and they just want them to go, go, go. So I think your approach is really sound.
The approach has been practiced was one of the first things ZingTrain started. But I think it's not that we do a long orientation and they're not working. We're doing on the job, but it's saying what's important on that first day. What are the actual important things that employee needs to know to be better on day 2? Because I can't download all the information of Zingerman's into your brain in one day. It's not viable. But what can I do? I can teach you how to smile and make eye contact. I can teach you how to ask for help. And I can teach you that asking for help is actually a sign of strength within our business. Right? So in other places, you might have been like looked down on or whatever else if you're asking for help. In ours, it's actually a sign of strength. So if I can teach you in day one, those three things, smile, make eye contact with everybody, how to ask for help and know that asking for help is a sign of strength, you now become a viable employee every single day.
Uh-huh.
And so you're now driving some of your work. And so I think part of it is getting clear what really do we need to know, as opposed to trying to say, how can I download as much information as possible?
Right.
I mean, the Matrix movie is great. I love it. It's one of my top 5. But we have yet to figure out how to download information in the back of people's brains, right? We don't have that ability. And so until we do, let's put it into kind of these concepts of little pieces at the right time. And so we're feeding the information in as they go, so they see the information in an appropriate timeline. And I think that's one of the key elements. You can work and have a body that's doing things, but they're not going to be able to slice, our Jamon Iberico ham, which is hand sliced, amazing product that only eats acorns, right? They're not going to be able to do that on day one. So they have to say, what is that pathway? What are the things we're doing in order to make you more and more beneficial and more successful each day?
Yeah. So you're building up, like, from when they walk in the door, like, the first, like, where's the bathroom? Like, where's the break room? Like, and a lot of times that stuff just gets skipped over. It's just like, here, put this on, here's a customer, let's get going. And so that's like probably why you're doing so well in your retention. Well, a lot of reasons, but that's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, a lot of it is when you're busy, people say, well, just watch me, right? Just watch me do this.
Right.
And then you look over and say, did you understand that? Can you do that? And they go, because what is the answer that every employee thinks you want is, oh, I got this, right? And they have no idea whether it's a computer entry, whether it's a client call, they're like, totally got this. And it's like, no, I don't have this. And so giving them that space to say, I don't know, is one of those back and forth, again, going to that compact of saying, asking for help and saying, I don't understand this. Even in our training model of saying, what questions do you have, as opposed to, do you have any questions? It's a change of language that describes, I want you to have questions. I want you to be inquiring. I'm not expecting you to know this unless, go through the checklist and check off all the things that I told you that you will not have any idea how to do tomorrow.
And I think I think that's really key. I also think it's important to remember that they might not even know what questions they have. I find myself in that a lot. I'm trying to learn. Right now, I'm trying to teach myself how to be really effective using Notion as a productivity tool. And I love the concept of it, but it's complex and it's hard to learn. And there's a big learning curve. And there's this community support place that you could go to with all sorts of questions. And I am so new at this platform, I'm not even sure what questions I have.
Right.
So I'm sure that your new employees are feeling the same way when they walk into the door.
And I would say one of my favorite tools that was given to me by Maggie Bayless when I first opened is the stages of learning a skill. And I could talk about this for hours. It was the most impactful thing. I've been training for 20 years before I got here. And she walked in the first week. So I came in full of confidence. Sure, give me content. I'll stand in front of people and I'll talk it and communicate it. But she said, you're going to go through these 4 stages in learning Zingerman's content. And I was like, whatever. But the stages are unconsciously, incompetent at the very bottom, where you don't know and ignorance is bliss. And then you go up to consciously incompetent, where you realize, where you just talked about of Notion, like I don't know what I don't know, and it's really uncomfortable. And then you move up to consciously competent and unconsciously competent. And one of the things that Maggie told me that was, besides sharing this, which blew my mind, and I wished I knew it like 20 years beforehand, was we're going to be here to support you when you hit consciously incompetent. We're going to help you through that stage because you're going to get there. And even though I was sure I wasn't, the next week I was nervous and stressed and overwhelmed. And she said, remember last week I said we'd be here to help. Communicating that care and the support of how it's going to look and what it might look like is also one of those pieces that I think as part of our structure really helps staff. And again, we are not perfect. We have situations that don't work. We're an organization of 750 people. It doesn't work perfectly every time, but having some of these tools and recipes to be able to share and give staff and give other leaders to allow some of these things to function a little better each time is what our goal is and how we make that work.
So you touched on it, and it's also one of my favorite concepts is the 4 levels of learning. Let's dive into that a little bit more and what that looks like in your industry, because I think that you're right. We could have an entire podcast just on that. but I'd like to spend a little more time on it today. So do you want to take a
Sure.
stab at going there?
Sure. I think for me, it's especially in regards to when you're engaging with, as a leader, when you're engaging with someone who you're trying to help train or engage or kind of communicate with. We also, and I'm going to add one more tool to kind of lay on it. And so the two that I think become really potent is what we call like best next time feedback. And so at the end of a shift, so I would say theoretically at the beginning of this, I could have said, Cynthia, I'd like to do like best next time feedback with you on this podcast. And then at the end, I would say, okay, Cynthia, what did you like best about the podcast today? And you might share a couple of things. You might say, oh, this wasn't wrong. And this didn't quite go perfectly. And I saw this or whatever. I say, no, wait, what did you like best? And I ask you to share a couple pieces. And then I share something that I liked best as the facilitator. And then I would say, okay, Cynthia, what would you do differently next time? And then I would share one piece of feedback that I might give you next time. Now, for your very aware employees, right? They're going to say, oh my goodness, like I totally messed this up. I was great at this. I saw this. Other employees are going to say, I was perfect. I was amazing. Like I did everything right. And you're in your head going, nope. And so I overlay that on the stages of learning because that employee who thinks they did everything perfectly, but they missed 95% is unconsciously incompetent. They're at that very bottom stage and I need to make them aware. So I can then say, wow, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure I got very clear expectations to you. I need to change my information. I might need to change who delivers that so that you get a different picture because what you did and what I would like are out of alignment. And I need to make you see that so I can move you up those stages of learning a skill. I think the other piece that really excites me that I've noticed is that most organizations choose trainers who are the very best at their job. They're amazing. They're like the Michael Jordans of their work. Well, the problem is the Michael Jordans are at that very top level where they're unconsciously competent.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are unconsciously competent, I like to think of that as the AGQZ process. So they go AGQZ done. It's like Michael Jordan shooting a free throw. He could still probably do it better than 95% of the population. But could he teach me all of the mechanics of what he's doing in order to get through that? Probably not.
Right.
And so we have that opportunity to say, well, maybe there's people who are a little slower, who are a little more, specific and process-based, who do the steps every single time. They aren't rock stars. They're not doing it, blowing everything out of the water, but they do it correctly every single time. And intentionally choosing those people who might be a little slower to be the trainers or newer people even, which is oftentimes a mind-blowing concept for owners to be like, I don't want the new people to teach them. I want the people who've been here forever. Well, the new people just went through it and they are in a similar mindset of these brand new employees trying to process and trying to learn and trying to do. There's 12 other layers I think we could go into this, but for me, it becomes a way of framing for the employee, for the manager, for the leader, a tool of kind of saying, where are we in whatever stage? Because people can be at different stages. One person could be at different stages of 5 or 6 different categories of their work.
So what you're doing is bringing empathy into your training. And that's very, very critical.
To me I talk about our training a lot. I teach on it a lot. I'm chair of our training engineers committee internally. So we have a committee that talks about it. And so it's a passionate component of mine, and I work for the training business. But yes, we try to have as many of those pieces in there as possible.
Can you share a recent success story or case study that showcases the impact of what you do?
I think one of the things so we've been doing our orientation model internally. I'll use an internal model, and we reassessed our orientation plan. We had a spot because we've grown, and so we have more locations in Ann Arbor. We're spread out across the town, nothing more than 15 minutes. So I know people like, that's not really spread out, but we're about 15, 20 minutes apart from many of the businesses, but transportation is a challenge. We are not in a large city where we have great, easy public transportation. So trying to get people to these orientation classes throughout the area became more of a challenge and more of an situation for us. And so we started to reassess what was important and how do we build that into an experience. And in doing so, we remodeled what would have been 2 or 3 different days worth of classes, kind of half day or 2 hours here, 2 hours here. into one, but we included more of our Zingerman's experience because we included our classic Reuben sandwiches from our deli. We included our classic pulled pork. So people had the food. If they weren't working at these businesses, they might not have gone over and visited. But to say this is part of the experience, to have our sour cream coffee cake, our most popular item we sell, right? To have that as part of breakfast, to have coffee from our coffee company that was just fresh roasted, and have a story behind each of these things and incorporate into it that we do an actual professional tasting. Not, Cynthia, what is your favorite here? But thinking about knowing the food, then looking at the food, then smelling the food and tasting the food and going through that and saying, what information do I have about this so I can talk about this sour cream coffee cake, not just as, wow, it's delicious, or, ooh, I don't like this, but here's what I'm actually able to go through. And so they're getting what we consider to be more of a Zingerman's experience than when we have just a singular class where they had tasting and they had food, they always have snacks. But this is now an intentionalization of some of that process to help every new employee kind of come into the fold. And this is offered twice a month. So it's not day one, right? It's not a go to day one and da. It's offered twice a month, and they do it. Sometimes their second or third month of orientation. They've already been here. And it's been a great way to kind of help bridge and share and engage them with newer, bigger kind of connections to our organization.
So now I think after this call, I'm going to have to be saying, do you ship, what all kinds of things do you ship besides brownies?
A lot. We actually ship, we do the coffee cake. It's our most popular item. We ship actually kits for our Reuben sandwiches. You can order them and actually have a kit delivered overnight. You would have sandwiches that would be ready to put together with everything that we use here.
My husband has a birthday coming up. That's one of his favorites. So maybe I'll order a little package to be delivered for that. That sounds like fun. Yeah. I like your concepts. What advice would you give to someone looking to, I'm not sure if I want to ask you looking to go into a leadership role or looking to go into a training role. So let's do both. What advice would you give to someone looking to enter a leadership role in like the food service industry or the industry that you're in? Let's start there.
I guess if I'm thinking about it, the one thing is to learn. I mean, I've read, reading your column and other people who've talked and such, thinking about it conceptually is there has to be a continuous learning model, right? Uh-huh. This idea that I can know enough and I'm ready and I'm done is just no longer viable. I feel like it's walking in a sand dune when you're working in the world right now, because every step you take up, you fall back half. And so if you aren't continuously moving, you're just going to slowly fall down. And so I think within that, getting really clear on kind of what excites you. And to me, I write a personal vision every single year as part of a performance review. And I would ask and think about, and anyone I work with now, I ask them to write a vision of where they want to be, getting clear on a picture of what success is and what success isn't. Because a lot of us are getting sometimes what we want or what the American population, but getting clear on what success means for you. Because success could mean a really big house in the city. It could mean a wonderful place, off grid. But getting clear on that, I think, is part of that, because that allows you to say, what is my work? What is my effort? And then finally, I think one of the things I've learned, people talk a lot about work-life balance. And again, this could be, I'm sure you've had podcasts about it and discussions. But I think work and life work is part of your life. And this isn't just mine. It's just a component of your life. But if you think about work, home, and self, it's a much more balanced stool because it's 3 legs. Work-life balance, if you try to put it on a stool, you sit on it like those 2-legged stools for camping, can fall over as soon as you don't pay attention to it. But work, home, and self, how am I allocating? How am I spending those components? Then your success as an individual and as a leader becomes a lot more relevant.
I like that. And I think it almost flows too. So if you have all 3 pieces, when you're focused on one, you can give it 100% because you know that you might be at home and a work call comes in. And it's more of a flow, a continual flow, so that you can be 100% when you can, but it's okay to back off for a second, take a work call and give that 100% because we're not looking for this balance. Oh no, this is my work time. This is my home time. It's all going to flow. It's all going to balance together. So I like that.
And it becomes a choice of what are you doing? Like what do you like to do? Do you want to work until 10 p.m. because that's what you like to do? Great. You can make that choice. Do I want to do that? No.
Right.
Right. But you start to allocate what does your percentages look like when you're successful, and then balance them over a month, not a day or, a week, but look at it over a month and say, how did it line up overall? And say, this is where we can be successful.
Yeah. When my husband and I just returned from a trip to Maui, we were 2 weeks, and I was consistent. I was on my computer a lot. And my husband's like, can't you just put work away and relax? And I said, I don't think you understand. Doing this, again, I was still trying to figure out Notion. For me, that was relaxing. For me, that was time that I don't get during my business day when I'm working with clients and doing things. That's this extra tool that I want to incorporate into my world that'll make more productivity for everything that I do. So I was excited about it. Yeah. And so he thinks taking a nap or watching a football game is the way to spend your relaxing time. Great. I like learning Notion. That was my excitement for vacation, which is weird, but that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's about choice and how I'm going to use this and how I'm going to allocate it and figuring it out that works and saying, okay, this month didn't work. How do I change it? Great. Now I have that tool because I have some information. I think data is a great tool to be able to help you with that. Well, however you track whatever your tool is, if it's just a gut feeling, there's opportunities.
So that's someone getting into leadership. What about someone who's thinking of getting into training as a trainer and facilitator myself? I'm curious what you would tell someone who said, I think I want to go into corporate training or business training in some way. What advice do you have for them?
I think part of it is finding a couple spaces of organizations that are doing really well. So walking in and saying, okay, does staff look good here? Does staff look happy? And say, what does it look like? And going through and being a person in those opportunities, right? And saying, what did it take to get here? And seeing, how am I going to go through this process? What can I learn and gather from a really successful organization? Even if it's a very introductory level, you're not going to come in as a corporate lead trainer. Right? There's a lot of layers there, but thinking instead, saying, what can I do in order to kind of gather these tools or mechanisms, our process here, and going through our onboarding, saying, okay, that's really unique. That's not like a corporate version. It's a very kind of unique process. Cool. So starting to gather some of those things and then starting to say, okay, how can I get really good at presenting? Because I think, that's one of those key elements is being really comfortable presenting. I had a lot of opportunity growing up to do theater and music. And so I was in front of people. So that part never was an issue, but getting comfortable in those and then saying, what is it that I get excited about sharing? And I think there's some of those pieces and looking for some tools. There's lots of stuff online now. Like when I was alert, in my early, stages, there was none of this. I didn't have internet. I couldn't pull up, be like, oh, what are 12 slide decks for da-da-da and see everything that's happening. But I think starting to say, what are the things that start to get me excited? Is there industry? What are those tools? And processing in that way, I would share, ZingTrain has training classes. We have training seminars that we do of how we train and our philosophy. So I think there's places like that. We aren't the only one who does it, but starting to get some of those pieces and then asking around and saying, hey, could I try something out with you? My foot in the door was always that I did team building. And that's what I started with out of college with Wayne County Schools and youth there. And that kinesthetic learning modality has been a unique component to everything I've done because I bring it to almost all of my in-person trainings. Is a way of kind of adapting a learning and connecting and making it more magnetic by having some sort of physical activity that represents and brings it. And so it's not just me talking, but it's doing that. So was it luck? Sure. Was it opportunity? Did I take an opportunity and kind of run with that? Yeah. And it's been the through line through my training experience.
I think you said something there that it makes me take that even one step further is there should be you really have to love what you're doing. When you're doing training and facilitating, you're correct. You can go online right now and find 12 slide decks to teach pretty much any concept that you want to teach. And you can stand up in front of a room and you can present that. But when you are passionate about learning and you are passionate about sharing information, that comes through. And the people who you are teaching and facilitating for are they're going to sense that. And they're going to get so much more out of it. So I can hear when you speak about it, how much passion you have. And that's why your organization and the training part of your organization is so successful.
I would say yes. I mean, I would say that for almost anything. If you're going to be a chef, you darn well better love food.
Right.
Right. I think if you're going to do training, you have to love what you're doing. If you're going to own a business just because you want to run numbers, I hope it's an accounting firm, because that's what, I think you have to have some definite passion and there has to be some excitement. If there isn't a heart connected to it, it's harder. And I think some of those organizations exist, right? And you see them and it's just like, why isn't this quite working? And it's because someone, had this great idea that this is the trend and I should be doing this and I should be doing this, but there isn't that connection. So for me within training, it's always been starting with youth and going to corporate and all sorts of different things in between. To me, that opportunity to make an impact and make a change that they can do something even better moving forward is an excitement I can't match almost anywhere.
I think it's interesting because a lot of times when, people can start out in a career and be very passionate about it, and then they're going through the motions for 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, they've lost that passion and they're not really aware of it. So they're like, I don't want this job anymore. I want to make a transition. They have no idea how to find that passion again. But you can change jobs 6 times. Unless you figure out how to get that passion back and what it is, and there's a method to do that. But until you can do it, you're just going to be in another job in the same industry, in the same field that you're not passionate about. So getting that back is really critical. And some of us are able to keep it for years and years, and because we love what we do. Others, it fades. So we have to be aware of that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we write visions, personal visions, which we use a hot pen model, which isn't ours, right? Where you write out and write out and write out and write out. And sometimes these amazing things kind of come forth. And so it's getting in touch. We write by hand because we have a belief it bypasses the brain, right? It goes from the heart to the hand to the pen. It bypasses this great editor we have in between our ears. And so starting to say, if you don't have that passion, that's one of those tools. So
absolutely. So for our listeners who want to find out more about your work, how can they connect with you and with your business?
You can reach out to either ZingTrain at Zingermans.com or T Anderson at Zingermans.com if you want to reach out to me directly. Would love to have email conversations, have conversations on Zoom, or kind of talk. It's obviously something I'm highly passionate about, and it's an exciting thing to get to share. So I would love to hear from you or talk with you in the future.
I'm hoping they call because it sounds to me like what you're doing is that extra special kind of training that I think needs to be out there in the world more.
Well, thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you for tuning in to the Care to Lead podcast today. If you found this episode valuable and want to stay updated on our latest interviews and insights, remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can catch us wherever podcasts are found. Your support means the world to us, and we look forward to having you join our community. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and remember that leaders who care to lead. Thank you for being here, Timo.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.